Welcome to Commsverse. This session is called, Are Your Firstline Workers Missing Out? And today will be presented to you by Paul Bloom. Have a wonderful session.
Thank you, Shelley. Well, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all of you, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening. Thank you for taking the time to join us. And if you're watching a recorded session, well, thanks for joining. So our session today has that theme there, Are Your Firstline Workers Missing Out? We're going to dig into that in a moment, but first of all, just a word of thanks to all of our sponsors. Of course, they make this event possible, and no doubt it's worthy of noting all the wonderful names up there that have contributed to this event. So just a little about myself. I have got quite a long history, 10 years at a telco in South Africa as a voice engineer and business voice specialist, going back a few years now. And then after that, I also spent 10 years at a company called Siemens, which no doubt you've heard of. I was a technical trainer for most of that time. And the last 10 years I've actually spent in New Zealand. And in the last 10 years-ish, I've focused on Microsoft technologies, OCS, Link, Skype for Business, and now Teams. And anything from consultancy to architecture to diving in and getting things done to training, the entire spectrum. So it's been quite fun and quite enjoyable. The last 7 years, thanks to Microsoft too, I've been able to get renewed just recently as an MVP once again, but 7 years running. So thank you, Microsoft. Really appreciate the kudos. Right, well, let's get started with our session. Firstly, we're talking about first-line workers here. And when we look at first-line workers, I guess the first thing we want to know is, who are we talking about? Now, traditionally, first-line workers may have been folks we're talking about when we're thinking about those who are not sitting in front of computers. Those are kind of on the move. They're serving customers. They're behind the counter, perhaps, or they're on a headset on a phone. They're busy dealing with customer queries, that sort of stuff. Perhaps they're in the production line and they're helping create product or getting product out the door. The sort of people who are the engine of a business, make the engine move. Now, these are generally broken up into two categories. There is what we like to call the face of the business and also the heart of the business. These are the two categories, so the face and the heart. So what does that actually mean? Well, just having a look at it. So service workers are typically referred to as the face or the client-facing activities. They are answering customer queries, managing orders, that sort of thing. And the importance of the face of a company is so much so that very often you and I, we will choose an organization to deal with based on the face. So if you've called into somebody and you've asked, perhaps it's an internet provider or whatever it is, and you've had an issue, you're talking to somebody and they're really good, they're really helpful, they're kind, they're courteous, and they really help you out. Well, your first impression of the face of the company is positive, and therefore you are more likely to continue doing business and even recommending that business. But on the flip side, if that experience is poor, if that person is not engaging or doesn't really have that connection with the business, they're just a cog in the wheel, then your experience may be less satisfactory. And so you can see the importance of the face of a business. The other side is, of course, the heart. So these are task workers. They're the heart of the business. They do the operational activities, producing products, maintaining products, running the daily operations. They're the people we don't really see, but the ones who are in the back end, making things happen. And so traditionally, when you look at these two groups, they've largely been excluded from technology advancements. I say largely. In some instances, we see little bits of improvement in the technology they use. Perhaps it's barcode scanners and smart devices that talk back to databases and that sort of thing. But they've largely been disconnected from the business. Perhaps their processes have become a little bit more technology wise, but they have been left out mostly, especially when you look at the modern workplace. And that's really where we're looking at things from this angle today. So what's the challenge? Well, typically people who are in this role of first line working are disconnected. They're not able to immediately get engaged when things don't work. They're not seeing how their contribution to business is valued. And so perhaps they find that a certain process doesn't work, or a certain approach doesn't work, or a certain product isn't designed the way it needs to be, or there's a flaw in the process. So usually what happens is they may adjust that for themselves, but that knowledge, that historical experience that could improve the entire business is lost to their vicinity because they don't have the ability to be connected and share. So that's a real problem. They're kind of siloed and disparate. The other thing, of course, is because of being disconnected, perhaps they're only able to communicate with their line manager, and they can never really get further than that, back to HQ, that sort of thing. So very often, they don't see the point of them adding value. They don't have a voice within the business. And so that means that in turn, they don't really take ownership. They just see themselves as a method of getting the job done, but not really seeing that they actually have an ability to improve and to have an input. So that's a real problem too. The other thing is that staff turnover is typically rather high in many of these sorts of roles. And so it's really hard to keep them trained, to keep people in the know, to continue progressing when you keep changing staff. So that's a real challenge in the first line worker space. We also have very often legacy tools, manual processes, they're age systems. Perhaps they're just there because they've always worked, and perhaps it's the method of clocking in and clocking out by means of punch cards, or maybe it's a spreadsheet on a wall somewhere in the staff room, and that's where your roster is. Those are very manual, very legacy processes, but changing them is quite costly. And of course, if you do change them to something more digital, there may be some training required. And because of the staff turnover, you can see this is a nasty circle because you just keep going around in circles, and it could be a bottomless pit. So how do you get around that? How do you improve that? Well, we've looked at the challenge. So what's the opportunity? What's the opportunity for the task? Firstly, we have the opportunity to relook at how first line workers are productive. We can equip them with very powerful tools, intuitive tools that not only deliver what they need, but are also secure and consistent. We can also streamline business practices. We can use customized apps, workflows, automation, and all these things actually save time and save money. And then there's, of course, your business. You have to safeguard your company assets. You have to safeguard your intellectual property. If we have high staff turnover, the chances that somebody's going to walk out the door with your IP, it goes up just by common sense. And so we don't want that to happen. We also don't want to slow first-line workers down because of security. And so these are some of the tasks the points we'd like to hit when we're looking at addressing first-line workers. So there are, from a technology perspective, some pillars that have been identified as, I guess you could call them leverage points, or let's call them pillars that prop up our first-line workers. And they cover those 4 points: collaborate, document access, app access, scheduling, and tasks. So when we're talking about collaboration, we're not just talking about communication. It's not just chatting. It's not just audio. It's video. It's group chat. It's meetings. It's broadcasting live events from within the organization. It's basically a central point of communication for all your workers. When we're talking about access to documents, we're not just talking about access to manuals. We're talking about, again, training content, procedures. We're looking at shifts. We're looking at onboarding staff and getting staff productive really quickly. So it's a central point of access for all things information-wise. Then, of course, when we look at app access, it's third-party access. It's those line of business apps. It's bringing the first line worker into the team's ecosystem, and it also has that management and control experience in the back end, so that first line workers can be managed in a appropriate way. And first line workers, as we know, often work in shifts. Shifts has been huge, the application shifts, and having scheduling and tasks all baked in. It's not just about knowing when your next shift is, swapping out shifts or picking up an extra shift. Those are all in there and they're all very, very powerful. But it's also useful to the company as well. It's knowing the roles, the location, who's on break, who's sick, all that metadata. It's very, very useful. It's content that typically was transacted on a spreadsheet that's been printed and put up in the cafeteria, and perhaps shifts were swapped out by scribbling manually on the spreadsheet and swapping things out. And of course, you can see how much of that metadata is lost. And we know that knowledge is power. So what about collaboration? Let's look a little deeper into collaboration. With collaboration for first line workers, it's connecting. Remember, we said one of the challenges was they're disconnected. So in this instance, collaboration really connects them. It's not just connecting staff within a store, for instance, if we use the analogy of a store worker, it's connecting that store with another store and another store and another region. And so as we go, the knowledge that they learn by on-the-job experience, the processes that don't work, the products that are failing, the improvements, all those kind of things, they're now able to communicate to each other and to share and grow. And that's done securely on any device. They can share all these things and stay connected within the business. And that then gives them that sense of ownership, that sense of belonging. And of course, that means they're not just a number or a cog in the wheel. We also have access for first-line workers. Now, again, we've kind of mentioned this already, but it's a one-stop place to access all content. It's not having all these many different areas to go and look. You know, we're not expecting first-line workers to go to the computer that's sitting in the staff area and go and look up policies on an intranet. That's often not very productive and usually not used. What we're talking about here is a one-stop access point for all the material that they need, whether that be manuals or handbooks, HR policies, all this sort of stuff. And it allows them then to do this from their device securely. So that's quite essential, keeping them in the know. Then there's the processes. Now we've got some standard applications that have initially, I want to call them initially, been surfaced within the Teams app. And of course, this is quite a new space in the big scheme of things. And it'll take still some time before it becomes real mainstream and we start seeing first line worker approaches changing with the technology. But think of this, it's not just about shifts, it's that creation, the management, swapping out of shifts. It's clocking in and out from your mobile device. It's location aware, so you're clocking in on site instead of queuing in a line with a clocking system that may or may not fail. It's being able to capture that data and it's digitized and going back in time to be able to look at it. Assigning and tracking tasks based on shifts, all baked in, and being able to change that really fast, really easy without having to pick up the phone to call first line worker to say, hey, listen, I've got some new tasks for you. I've got some changes, or please go and have a look. There are some changes on the notice board. It's just taking away all that legacy method. Capturing customer feedback. How important is that? Listen to your customers. Being able to do that really easy, really simply, and then doing it in such a way that it's collated in the back end. It's easy to dissect and to process. And then, of course, line of business apps, simplifying those everyday processes, the line of business apps you've already invested in, surfacing those within the Teams ecosystem, whether that's inventory management, approvals, whatever that is. It's become a really simple process to be able to surface those and make them available to your first line workers. What about data protection? Well, because we have high turnover of staff, the possibility of losing data is exponentially increased. You could have one of your first line workers, we hope not, leave the business with your IP. Now that would be a real sad situation, wouldn't it? With data protection, we can set sensitivity labels on the data. We can highlight who has access to what, where does the data go? And this doesn't matter even if it's bring your own device, BYOD, any mobile device, if the device is lost, misplaced, or stolen. Today, how secure is that data? Well, with being proactive, you are able to manage that. You can control not only how that's shared, but who has access, and you can control those sensitivity labels so that only authorized persons have access. So we all hear those scary stories of data that was leaked. Should have used sensitivity labels. Well, you know then, once you've got this in place, if something does get out, that it's been done by an authorized account, right? So think of building that all in, baking that all into the first line worker experience. Right. So those are some of the key areas of the first line worker experience. I want to move on now to actually looking at a demo. Now, because I have absolutely no faith in the joys of live demos, I've pre-recorded this, and you will note that I've actually gone through quite a number of the items we've spoken of in a really quick way. So hold on, this is going to be a fast-paced demo. Now, here we go. Right, let's look at our demo, standardizing the Teams app view or layout. We'll go into our web portal, and on the Teams app setup policies, we've got a layout for different experiences depending on use case. So you can duplicate those. I'm going to add a new one. Let's call it security, and also add a description. Now, as I'm typing in the description, you'll see there's upload custom apps that'll allow users or first line workers to add their own custom apps, and I might turn that off, and allow user pinning so they can change the layout themselves. Now, I may or may not want to do that, but I do want to add this shifts. Shifts is very powerful, and I really do like to expose that, depending on the use case, obviously. And I might just move it to the top so that it's the first app on the client from the left at the bottom, and I might reorder a few of these. You'll notice that you need to click on the left of the little icon, otherwise you can't actually move them, in case you've been having a bit of trouble with that. Right, I'll just save that now. Of course, the next step is to make sure that this app policy that I just set up is associated with the correct users. So I'll go look for my security user, and there he is, head of security, of course. And we'll just go and edit his assigned policies. Wait for the policy change to load up there. Click on the required policy, add that security, and we are done. Moving right along to our next subject, shifts. Let's have a look at how to schedule shifts. Now, there's my roster, and you'll see I've got my A, B, C, and D teams. I've also got my team members. I've got a week 1, week 2, early shift, late shift with alternating weeks. And then, of course, my time zones there, and the early and the late shift. Right, moving that out the way. Now, what I want to do is pick the team where these workers, first-line workers, are all a member of, add shifts, and I'll just want to pin that for ease of access. Now, you'll see I'm looking at July, and there's a bunch of things on this page. I can change it to day view, week view, month view, but let's go into the settings first. We can choose our time zone. We can choose our start of week, and then, of course, we can change when you're copying shifts from one slot to another, what is included. Can first-line workers request open shifts, and then of course all the different items for requesting time off. And I've already got a few there to align with our HR policy. I might just add 1 or 2 there, change the icon, and that'll be surfaced to the first-line workers when they request time off. Of course, I can also set up the clocking a time clock, which is a real old school way of folks sort of signing in and signing out to work, but necessary, where I can geolocate that. I can use the GPS coordinates of that location. If you're not sure to find them, there is a link over there. And then when somebody signs in and signs out, you can tell whether they're actually on location where they should be, which is quite handy. Very good. So we've got that all. Let's go to our schedule next. Let's look at it again. Right, okay. So we'll create our first group, team A, and then we shall add some users, because you can't add any shifts to a team until there are some members of that team. So we'll add Fred first because he's first up. And just know that when you're adding users, they have to be members of the team. So I'll add one here. Nadine's not a member of the team yet, so let's add her, see what happens. Yep, okay, so she's not a member of this team, and therefore she cannot be added to any shifts in this team. Makes sense, right? Okay, we'll add her in the back end in a moment. Let's go start adding some shifts for Fred. Actually, let's look at, let's start on a Monday, because that's what we said. Monday was our start. Add a shift. Now, firstly, there's Fred. We can change it to an open shift there. More about that a bit later. Set the time span, and then of course for a label, I don't like the time on the label, so I might just give it a label. You would have noticed I could change the color as well of the shift, and then a shift note. It's just a note that'll be visible to anyone who starts the shift, of course. Now just type that in there. Now remember that if I copy and paste this particular shift, this note will be in each of those shifts because of the flag we set just before. Right, it's a typo, and a few more words of encouragement for the shift. Right, now you'll notice that we can also add activities as well down below. And if I click on that, it allows me to add, I guess you could call them tasks, and I'll just save them, come back and show you. You can actually do it afterwards as well. I've got a few that I've been playing with before, but let's add, say, courier pickup. The courier pickup's nice and early every morning, so we want to make sure that we're ready. And I might give it a code and a color. Now look at the timeline on the top where it says early shifts. As I adjust, you see the little pink line adjusting? There we go. There where my mouse is what I was talking about. And that shows you on the timeline what that shift is sort of tasked out with. We'll save that, and we can come back and add more. We could have done it in one go too as well. No problem at all. Just add a new shift, and perhaps a handover to the late shift would be a handy reminder. Choose a color so it stands out, and you'll see it'll drop into the timeline in the top there to the far end once I've added it correctly. There we go. I can save that. Just tidy up the typing. OCD. Right. Okay, sorted. Done. Very good. And we can save that. Now we've got our shift set for one shift, for one person. I can grab that, Control C and Control V if I want to copy paste, just like you would in Excel, right? In fact, if I go and grab some shifts, I can copy and paste them by just using my keyboard keys as you would in Excel. Nice and easy, nice and quick. Let's add another group. Let's add team B. And again, we'll have to add a user to team B before we can add any shifts. This is in team B, Tian. Okay, let's go and add Tian to there. He's in as a member, so he's all good. We'll close that out. He'll be visible. I can now go and create a shift. I'll add a shift. Let's give it a different color because it's a late shift, so it stands out on my roster. And grab the timeline, label it accordingly as we did before. Give them another shift note, which is always handy. Of course, remember, you can come and change this. You can come and edit it per shift if you want. If you wanted to do, say, additional shift activities on a per shift basis, you can just come back right into shifts and add those activities for yourself, for the workers, and they will get those shifts. So we'll just set the time for calling the alarm company, save that, done. Now, perhaps we just want to copy and paste that. So select cells, Control V, and we've just done the week. And we can replicate that because remember, it's a rotating, week 1, week 2 type roster. fill out the weekend. Let's add time off. And right about now, I'm thinking I probably should have added a weekend option in there, which I can always go back and do. But for the sake of expediency, let's choose mental health day, which is, I guess, an alias for weekend. Add that in there, Control C, Control V, do it again. And now we can copy the entire 2-week period and replicate down here. And we can do the same for the top row as well. So Team A, Team B, getting their shifts rolled out nice and quickly now. Once we have completed the month, it'll be easy to copy and paste that some more. And of course, we can even add more members and expand that. Let's do that in a moment. Just finish up my repetition intervals. Very good. Okay, let's say Team C and let's add some users there. Who's that? L and Sean. Okay, let's chuck them in there. And L's in. Sean's in. And okay, now let's grab our repetition. So they would be on the same repetition as A. Well, let's just finish D. Come back up. Who are we going to add to B to fill up the B roster? Who's in there? So now I've got 2 users in B. So I can actually take that entire, just highlighting them with the mouse, Control V, done. Keyboard, mouse, whichever way you prefer, standard Excel. Add another member to A, so we can do the same there. In the back end, I've added Nadine, so secret, off she goes, and Control all of those and paste. And now I've got Team A and Team B done, and I can actually go and copy the entire Team A, copy that down to Team B. I could have done A and B and copied it to C and D in one go, but I'm not going to add any users to D just yet. A quick look at open shifts before we publish these shifts. So open shifts are shifts where there are no assigned staff. So open shifts folks can take if they have the inclination or the time. So I've given it a color and just dark blue, just giving it a name. Stock take is good. It's Saturday, so we shall choose 9 to, let's call it 4. Nice day for an open shift. And just a comment so they know what they're signing up for, what we're doing on that day. At least just a very high level, and comment as to how many folks we need. Then of course a little incentive as per usual. We can save that, and there's my open shift. I can come back and add some tasks or modify it. Like for instance, I can add more people. I can assign which team it applies to, and let's just add the activity. Talk to Jonathan, he's going to be leading the day. So we do that nice and early in the morning, first 15 minutes, he'll give you assigned work and we'll save that. Now we're in a position to grab that open shift and copy it. So we'll copy it and I'll chuck it on Sunday as well. Maybe we'll grab the 2, we'll do it across all teams. So all teams have an option. So I'm effectively going to have 4 people for stock take. Okay, so you'll notice now that I've got my schedule set up for a month. I might just copy that because I want to replicate this in my case. So I'm going to grab the schedule we've just created. I want to copy it with all the groups and notes and things. And I'm going to copy this recurring roster 3 times over. So I'll have effectively July, copy to August, September, October. So let's have a look how that went. There's July, all right? And then just flicking forward to October, September. Yeah, I've got a little gap over there because I missed the first few days when I selected because I was taking it from this week. Never mind, moving straight on. So you'll notice there's a little asterisk on each of these. It just means that the updates haven't been published. So when I click share with a team, it gives me the range. Where do I want to share from where to where that I've made changes for? And of course to the team or everyone that's been affected only. And you click share, and that will send a chat message to everyone, and they're all in the know that the update to the schedule's been updated. Right, what about stream and forms? How can they be used in a first-line worker perspective? Well, let's go grab our team we created before. I've created a training tab. I've put some, it's basically a stream channel which is called support training, and I've got all my training videos in there. I can also do a monthly update. So this is a little bit different. This is where I've actually pinned a specific stream video within the channel, or the tab rather, and you'll just see it playing over there. As soon as you go to it, it gives you the option to play. So you don't actually have to choose the video in question. But that's not all. I've also got this forms piece here, full employee check-in, which I've tabbed on the top. And there's my form, and that'll be then available to my first line workers. So those are the 3 bits of information I'm going to share with my first line workers. What's this all look like from the mobile device? Let's look at the first line worker experience. Firstly, we're signed in as our first line worker. You can see there are my shifts, my late shifts, my time off, my early shifts, weekends, and so on. I can now have a quick look at those and decide whether I need to do any changes. In this case, I'm going to request some of those open shifts. I want to request the 11th of July shift. You'll see it says pending. That's gone off to my team manager, and you'll see the comment there and all the rest of it. Perhaps I've requested the shift on the 11th, but I'm also going to ask to swap out a shift. Let me swap out a shift with maybe Dave. Now, perhaps I should have messaged Dave first, but I know Dave's always keen to grab my Monday shift, so I'm going to give him a little note over here, see what he says. Right, and that's gone off to Dave. Again, pending. I've got to wait for him to take that shift. Now I'm going to ask for some time off. Perhaps it's annual leave. Let's grab some time off. Let's go with the 31st. Actually, you know what? It's not much of a long weekend. Let's grab 2 days, 30th, 31st. Great time to finish the month. And just put in some comments over there. Now this will go to the boss, and it says annual leave. So again, you know, whatever I need to categorize that under. Big contract starting, a little bit of me time to get ready for it, and that's gone off. And you saw there was a cancel option as well. Now once they're approved, I'll get messaging from the boss. Let's look at clocking in. So again, you hold down the start button and it starts clocking. Now look on the top there, it says you're on the clock, but not on location, and that's simply because the geo location I had before was not where I am right now. I've just started a break, so you can see that there's my break being timed again. Hold it down and the break ends, and I'm back on the clock. So this information will be stored somewhere in the back end for the boss to get hold of. Just sending a message. So looking for one of my colleagues, Nadine. Perhaps I found, here's an invoice on my desk. I found an invoice. I wonder who it's for. So Nadine's doing purchasing, so I might just send that through to her, see how she responds. So first line workers, communication, all secure, and she's asking what the invoice is for. Go grab a snapshot of it. Now the beauty of the snapshot is this is not stored at all in the photo location on the phone, and they're just using the document. It uses Lens, you know, the old Lens technology. Frame it up nicely by looking for the parallel lines. There she goes. Oh, she's giving me some praise. How wonderful. So I've now got some praise from her, and I'm responding because I'm one-handed now. So I'm just responding by recording my message instead of typing it out. And there we take another photo. Perhaps you want to do some annotation. I might go, hey, did you notice I got charged for using my card? And I might just send that off to her. Of course, we can go ahead and also click on the ellipses and select location to share our location. It finds me with the GPS coordinates and drops that within my session chat over there. And I can even put in some requests. Maybe I need some help. I need somebody to come out to where I'm at, and I'm not 100% sure, or I know where I am, but this is just so much easier than trying to explain where I am. And of course, they can use that location to navigate to get to me. Let's just go on back to some of the other areas that we looked at before. Just coming back to our team within the team's setup. We can come back here, go to more. There's our training, there's our monthly updates, there's our forms that we created before. So just looking at the training first, remember that this is loading it from Stream, really. There are my training sessions, and I can start them from here and have a look at them. And Perhaps it's some line of business training or some process or something like that that's in there. And that's pretty handy for us to be able to deliver that to first-line workers, to their mobile devices, to wherever they are. Of course, because it's using the capabilities of a mobile device, you can do all sorts of things you could normally do with a mobile device, like flip it over, that sort of stuff. Let's look at the monthly updates, which is my embedded video from Stream within that particular tab. And you'll see I've just flipped it over on its side so we can get a full view of the content. I've obviously got the captions on there, so that's what we're seeing. And just flipping it back upright, we also have the button on the top there next to the close button, which allows us to zoom in, zoom out, which is quite handy. And then lastly, just going over to our form. There's a form over here. We can go and answer this form, and it'll collect the data from this form and then drop it into it, just like a normal form setup, drop into the mobile device. These are all technologies that we're very aware of. No doubt you've played with most of these. All we're doing is we're finding use cases where they come together and they make the first-line worker experience smarter, helping people to work more efficiently, more streamlined, and trying to take away all that sort of traditional time-wasted experience from collecting documents and all that sort of stuff. Coming in and having to fill out things manually and all that kind of thing. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. I'm sure you no doubt agree. Just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more we can do in this space. And these are, like I said, just the baked in components. We haven't even begun to look at things like signing in via your mobile device number and that sort of stuff. So that's all we have for the first line worker experience. Let's jump back into our slide deck. Yeah, so getting back to our slide deck, that's quite a massive amount of information to take in. So do come back and have another look if there's anything you missed. I want to focus just for a moment on RealWear. So RealWear is a vendor that makes some really, really cool hardware. And what they've done is they've taken the first line worker experience concept and applied it to their model. So just to give you an idea, this is the HMT one, and it is basically a wearable Android tablet with a small display. It's Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, it's waterproof, it's got a battery that'll run all day long. It's got really good speaker, loud and clear, ready for working in loud environments as well. It's got a 60 megapixel camera, a display that gives you the impression of a 7-inch tablet. And this device, it's used in so many scenarios, primarily where you need both your hands. So think of scenarios where it's a case of perhaps high risk, or perhaps it's in the hospital area where you can't take in paper and that sort of thing. So RealWear just takes the first line worker experience to a whole new level if you have that situation where you really need to be hands-free for whatever reason. Now, what I'd like to do is just show you a quick video on the RealWear experience with Microsoft Teams. Please have a look.
RealWear is a partner who creates ruggedized wearable solutions that can be used by first-line workers to stay connected to other employees on remote locations. So let's take a look. Now here, I am at a manufacturing site, and I need remote support to fix the HVAC unit. Now, because Teams is integrated right in my headset, I can make a call right from this view. My programs, Teams, select item 2. Hey, Pete, how are you?
Hey, Karan, I'm good. What's up?
The L1 and L2 connections look okay to me. How about you?
Yeah, they look good to me too. Can you do me a favor and snap a photo for our records?
Perfect, I'll do that. All right, thanks, man.
Thank you.
My camera, take photo. Select photo, send message. Now, as you just saw, this was a real-life example of how Microsoft Teams can be integrated in a new form factor, like a RealWear headset, to provide value to our first-line workers.
Very good. Okay, so what have we considered? Well, we've looked at how we can take first-line workers and catapult them into the modern workplace. We've looked at connecting people in the business to really learn from those experiences and from those processes that could be tweaked. Now, when you do that, you really show staff that they're not just a cog in the machine, but instead they have much to contribute. And so your staff retention goes up. The staff feel that they have an ownership to the end product. You can always keep them up to date because your training is central. It's in one place. It's always available. You can report on that. And you can help people get up to speed really quickly. That includes access to manuals, to guides, documentation. It also means that you can put in modern tools such as your line of business apps, also leveraging some of the standard applications that are in there already. And remember, all of this is governed by Microsoft security. So secure end-to-end, and it's one of those things where you just, once it's turned on, it's just sorted. Now that really brings us to the final comment, and my final comment is really that when looking at first-line workers, don't ever think that one size fits all. Every profile has different requirements, and so there's a lot of measuring before cutting. And so you can develop profiles just like you would when you're doing any sort of adoption and change approach in the team space. So really an opportunity to create profiles to adjust and apply to each use case. There are some of the references where the material came from that I've used in today's presentation. And of course, that brings us to our Q&A session. So if you do have any questions, I'd be happy to hear them, if we have any time, that is.
It looks like you've done such a wonderful presentation. We don't have any questions.
Yeah, too kind. What I might just do is I might just pull up our slide once again. So thanks again to all our sponsors. If there are anyone who would like to join me in the breakout room, I'll hang out there for a few moments.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'll post the breakout session link for anyone that wants to head over there. Oh. And Paul, we appreciate your time. That was wonderful. And I have to say I geeked out a little bit with the whole ability to use Teams with what he did with his glasses. No, I won't get all technical, but I just thought that was really cool.
Thanks for being my co-pilot, Shirley.
Of course. And I hope to see you again soon, Paul.
Okay,
have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.